Shalom. Giving all honor, all praise, and all glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone that rule well. And as always, peace, blessings, and salutations to the tabernacle of David, the hopeful elect, that are scattered abroad throughout the four corners of the earth. So, I'm watching this video, Captain Tazaryach versus Andrew Wilson. And the topic was, whether polygyny is good for society or if it's a sin, is it a sin? And, this Andrew Wilson guy, he's actually against it. He thinks that the Bible teaches monogamy. He gives his reasonings as to why it's actually sinful, is not productive, the negative effects that it has within society. And Captain Tazaryach, he gives his reasoning as to why it's actually not sinful, which the Bible is very clear on this situation. I don't even think it's really to be debated. All right, we know that there are several examples of men, all right, righteous men, who was able to multiply their legacy with multiple women. All right, they had multiple sons. They had lineages that they passed down through various women. So it's definitely in the Bible. But what I want to do is, because I got around like 30 plus minutes into it, and you're gonna hear this Andrew character, this guy, which I'm surprised Tazaryach even agreed to come back on this guy's platform, this Cooley guy. All right, he showed his true colors the last time I saw Tazaryach on his platform. When they had the gorilla G-Peg on there with him, and this dude Cooley, he was definitely not he was not genuine. He was biased. He's not the guy to mediate such topics. All right, but Tazaryach, he's just making his rounds. He has to get his name out there. But anyway, this is something that shouldn't really be debated, but I was curious to watch it anyway. So I got around 30 plus minutes in, and basically Andrew, he's gonna ask Tazaryach to basically prove to him that the act of sex, which is consummation of marriage, is actually marriage, right? Because you still have people with the Christian state of mind that believe that you have to have this wedding ceremony first, and you also have to go down to the courts so you can get the state involved and sign this certificate or this contract to make them a third party in your marriage, and that's what make the marriage official. But that's to people that are westernized. When you go into the Bible, there were different various ways that marriage took place. It wasn't always with a big ceremony. Okay, you'll know in this lesson, all right, after I'm done, that the act of sex itself is marriage. That's how you join with a woman in a union. All right. So anyway, let's listen and we'll get into it.
Do when they can't handle the pressure. When there's a ceremony for Rachel, we can read it. Jacob worked 7 years. After the 7 years, they had a ceremony. When he went in there, even if we was to go back to Genesis 29, when them 7 years was up, Laban gave Jacob Leah instead of Rachel. And then Jacob is like, why did you do that? And he said, because Leah was the older one. But there was no ceremony for Rachel.
I'm going to show you how weak this argument is.
So he had a ceremony for one, but had sex and married both of them.
Can you explain this to me, dude? If it was actually the case that if you slept with a woman, that became your wife. Why can't you show me examples of the apostles telling us this, especially Paul, that if you just slept with a woman, she immediately...
And I'm glad he said that. When I heard that, I was like, are you kidding me? That Paul is the only one I'm going to use to actually answer that. I'm not going to go nowhere else in the scripture. Because Tazaryach, he pretty much had that covered in this debate. All right, that there were certain instances where, men jumped the gun and they just, dealt with their wife and they were official. He brought up Isaac and Rebecca. When he went into his mother's tent, Sarah's tent, and so what happened there? When he brought her into the tent, what happened up in there where all of a sudden she became his wife? It made no mention of a ceremony. All right? And no man in no circumstance in the scriptures prostrated themselves before their woman. No man got down on one knee when they married a wife. All right? We live in a simped out, a soft world. Okay? Anyway, that's matter of fact, let me run it back so you can hear him again.
Was the older one. But there was no ceremony for Rachel.
I'm going to show you how weak this argument is.
So he had a ceremony for one, but had sex and married both of them.
Can you explain this to me, dude? If it was actually the case that if you slept with a woman, that became your wife, why can't you show me examples of the apostles telling us this, especially Paul, that if you just slept with a woman, she immediately becomes your wife? Why can't you show us any of the teachings of Christ showing that? Why is it that you're showing a nebulous passage which just states that he slept with this woman who was given to him as his wife? You're just saying that in the absence of them writing down or documenting any type of ceremony associated with that therefore it means the sex is what made them husband and wife. That's absurd, dude. That's absurd.
So he thinks that concept is absurd, right? And he said, show me where the apostles taught that, or even Apostle Paul. So I'm glad he referenced Apostle Paul, because that was who I had in mind. And I've actually used a couple verses in his epistles, primarily the epistle to the church of Corinth. 2 different verses that actually demonstrate that the act of sex is an act of marriage. All right, now we're gonna go here to the first one, and this is 1 Corinthians the 7th chapter, and this is the instruction on marriage. He's giving advice and instruction on how to handle marriage. All right, and this is dealing with sexual relations. 1 Corinthians 7:1 in the NLT, it says, now regarding the questions you asked in a letter, in your letter, yes, it is good to abstain from sexual relations, but because there is so much sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman should have her own husband. The husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. And this is to prevent any type of sexual immorality from entering. All right, because once you're a part of the church, there's certain things that are not tolerated. There are things that are prohibited. We're supposed to glorify the Lord with our bodies. So you don't want to yield your body to sexual sins. All right, so he's given instruction. It says the wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. Do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time so that you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. Afterward, you should come together again so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. All right, so let me jump down. And he's giving you the pros and cons of being in a marriage. But let's get straight to the point. And I'm going to start at verse 35. The point is at verse 36. It says, I'm saying this for your benefit, not to place restrictions on you. I want you to do whatever will help you serve the Lord best with as few distractions as possible. And we know that women can be a distraction because you got to give time to them. And that takes away time from you, serving the Lord. All right. And that's also why if you're a bishop or a deacon, you have that office, you have the oversight. So you have to pay attention to those that are up under you, under your leadership. So you ain't going to have time to tend to, a bunch of women. So the criteria for a bishop and a deacon was, hey, just deal with one woman. And a lot of Christians are use that criteria and apply it to all men to say that this monogamy is pretty much the standard. All men are supposed to be monogamous, and that's not true. It says, verse 36. It says, but if a man thinks that he's treating his fiance improperly and will inevitably give in to his passion, let him what? Let him marry her as he wishes. It is not a sin. All right. And we're talking about sexual relations. That's what this whole chapter is about. Pros and cons in marriage and sexual relations. You're not to defraud your wife. Your wife is not to defraud you, except y'all agree for a time period to, abstain for a period of time, for prayer's sake or whatnot. But if that passion, if you're burning, you're not wrong if you deal with your woman. It's not a sin. But notice it says, let him marry. So what does that mean? Let him marry. Does that mean, okay, well, if he is burning, then, let him go and sign this contract and let him have this ceremony. It is not a sin. Obviously, that's not a sin. This is talking about if you actually just can't contain yourself, go into that woman. All right. But now she's yours. She's your woman officially. Now, when you look up that word marry in the Greek, and this is why we always stress going into the original language, right? It holds more force when you read it in the original language, like it says in the prologue of Sirach. So she passed the flower of her age, which is right when after she hits puberty. That means that her body is developed and ready to reproduce. All right. And that's science, by the way. The Lord, he created that science, not us. People get offended at that. Oh, what are y'all saying? Well, we're saying what the Bible say and what nature says. All right. When you hit puberty, that's your cross from childhood into adulthood. Okay. Sexual maturity. That's what happens in puberty. Your body starts to develop. All right. The woman, she has her ovaries. She gets her egg. She starts bleeding. That happens around, for some women 12, some women 13, some women 14. And they married young back then. Not now, because things are different now. And people get offended even when you talk about that. They get, fidgety. They get uneasy. Because everybody has a Western way of thinking here. And their emotions are tied to their thought process and, things that were taught to them, which is mainly by this oppressor, man. So Esau, he has control over the majority of these people's feelings and thoughts. He's pretty much the God of this world. But anyway, you look up that word marry, and this right here is solid proof, but it doesn't end with this. Because like I said, I got two verses. This is just one of them. So you look up the word for Mary, the Greek word is gameo, right? Gameo. And it says to wed of either sex, marry a wife. To lead in marriage, take a wife. All right. And so it doesn't really give you much in a Bible usage of the definitions, but just let's just deal with the term gameo, which is Greek. Now, what I did was, because when I first went into this and studied this, it sounded a lot related to the word that I studied in biology class, known as the word gamete. If you're familiar with that term in biology, a gamete is pretty much a sexual reproductive cell. All right, that's carried by the wife, and the husband. All right, the woman carries the egg, the man carries the sperm. When you put those two gametes together, that's what causes the reproduction. All right, in the process known as sexual reproduction in biology. So even in biological terms, sex is actually marriage, and this is proof. It says, are there two, I typed in Google, are the two words gameo and gamete related? AI overview. Yes, the words gamete and gameo or gameo are related. Both words derive from the ancient Greek word gamos. All right, meaning marriage or union. Here's how they're connected. Gamete, this term refers to a reproductive cell, sperm or egg, that unites with another gamete during sexual reproduction to form a new organism. All right. And that's why every time in the scripture it said, and he knew his wife and she conceived. That's the process. That's it. All right. The term was coined in 1878 by German cytologist Edward Strasburger from the Greek words gamete, wife, and gametes, husband, reflecting the idea of cells coming together in a union or marriage. It says gameo, this ancient Greek verb, directly translates to marry or to wed. It signifies the act of entering into a marriage or union between individuals. But how are they unified? How's that? What's the consummation? What makes them unified? What joins two people into one? The act of sex, man, between a husband and a wife. It says, therefore, the relationship lies in their shared origin. Both words are derived from the concept of marriage or union in ancient Greek, though one applies it to the biological fusion of cells and the other to the social institution of marriage. All right, which it coincides together, because when you go, let's go here now. Now that we got that out the way, this is 1 Corinthians 6:13. This is in the NLT. And this is also dealing with sexual immorality, which he's basically telling the church that any sexual immorality is forbidden among us in the body. If you're part of this church, your body is a temple, and you're to glorify the Lord with your body. So there's no toleration for sexual sin. All right, whether it's homosexuality, whether it's adultery. So it says 1 Corinthians 6, starting at verse 13, it says, you say food was made for the stomach and the stomach for food. This is true, though someday the Most High will do away with both of them. But you can't say that our bodies were made for sexual immorality. They were made for the Lord, and the Lord cares about our bodies. And the Most High will raise us from the dead by his power, just as he raised our Lord from the dead. Don't you realize that your bodies are actually parts of the anointed? Yeah, because and you know, he's the head of the church, so he's our head. So you know, we're joined in one body with Yahushai. All right, we're one with him, just like a wife would be one with her husband. It says, should a man take his body, which is part of the anointed, and join it to a prostitute? Never. And don't you realize that if a man joins himself to a prostitute, he becomes one body with her? For the scriptures say the two are united into one. Let's read it in the KJV. And it says, verse 15, it says, know you not that your bodies are members of the anointed? Shall I then take the members of Yahushai and make them the members of an harlot? God forbid. What? Know you not that he which is joined to an harlot is one body? So what exactly is the duty of an harlot? What do you do with an harlot? Do you go and take her and have a wedding ceremony and have all the family around? You think your family is going to be pleased to see you marrying a harlot? No, you got with a harlot to get your rocks off. All right. You exchange money for her services. Now, we previously covered this. Elder Yashawamba did a lesson on it. I think I may have done a lesson on it. But just to clarify, there's a difference between a temple cult prostitute or harlot and a common prostitute harlot. All right. And matter of fact, let me just do this, because it'll prove it just proves that when he talks about this, he's talking about in the idolatrous sense. All right, because in the ancient world, you had what they call temple prostitutes, where you had women that indulged in sexual rituals to commemorate the idol that they served. So if you was in an act of sexual intercourse with them, you was pretty much joined in them paying homage to another god, another idol. All right. So if you do this, but you are part of the church of Yahushai, it's pretty much like you're joined. You're pretty much committing spiritual fornication against the church. All right, you're not being faithful to the anointed. So let me just go to Chat GPT. And I'm going to just type this in. What was the difference between a temple prostitute and a common prostitute? Yep. And this is the response, and I'm just gathering information. All right. The Chat GPT AI is not the oracle of the Most High. We just use it to gather information. We chew the meat and spit out the bones. All right. It says the difference between a temple prostitute and a common prostitute lies primarily in religious texts or context, purpose, and societal role. Temple prostitute, context associated with ancient religious practices, especially in Mesopotamia, Canaan, Phoenicia, and parts of ancient Greece and India. Role, engaged in ritual sex as part of religious worship or ceremonial rites, often in temples dedicated to fertility deities like Inanna, Ishtar, Astarte, or Aphrodite. All right. You had Baal Peor, if I'm not mistaken, where you had men that were caught in the act. And it was at the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers 31. Let me just get this example. In Numbers 31 and 16, it says, "These are the very ones who followed Balaam's advice and caused the people of Israel to rebel against the Lord at Mount Peor. They are the ones who caused the plague to strike the Lord's people. So kill all the boys and all the women who have had intercourse with a man. Only keep the young girls who are virgins may live. You may keep them for yourselves." And people gonna get offended at that, right? So you can't deal with the heathen though. But Eleazar, he came and he started putting people down. Okay? Because you had a lot of Jake that was impure because they were indulged in this sexual sin. Numbers 25. Yeah, this is Numbers 25 and Numbers 25, and I'll start at when it says, "While the Israelites were camped at Acacia Grove, some of the men defiled themselves by having sexual relations with local Moabite women. These women invited them to attend sacrifices to their gods, so the Israelites feasted with them and worshiped the gods of Moab. In this way, Israel joined in the worship of Baal Peor, causing the Lord's anger to blaze against his people. The Lord issued the following command to Moses: seize all the ringleaders and execute them before the Lord in broad daylight, so this fierce anger will turn away from the people of Israel. So Moses ordered Israel's judges, each of you must put to death the men under your authority who have joined in worshiping Baal of Peor. Just then, one of the Israelite men brought a Midianite woman into his tent, right before the eyes of Moses and all the people, as everyone was weeping at the entrance of the tabernacle. When Phinehas, son of Eleazar and grandson of Aaron the priest, saw this, he jumped up and left the assembly. He took a spear and rushed after the man into his tent. Phinehas thrust the spear all the way through the man's body and into the woman's stomach, so the plague against the Israelites was stopped, but not before 20,000 people had died. So you can see that it was a ritual that they was basically sleeping with these women. He brought her in the tent so he can pop her, and that was part of their ritual in worshiping Baal Peor. So he caught them right in the act, and he took his sword and stuck it through both of them while they was in the act. So when it talks about joining unto harlots, it's talking about in the sense of temple harlotry, which would basically be idolatry. All right. So this is what Paul was referring to, but this also proves in context that if you have sexual relations with a woman, you're joined unto her. That means that she becomes your wife. All right. She becomes your wife. And if you're married to the Lord, you have no business having, dealing with these other gods. Okay. Whether you're dealing with the philosophies that commemorates the worship of these other gods, or whether you're dealing with a strange wife who worships a whole nother god, and now she got you dealing with her, and now you giving homage to her god. No, you're supposed to keep yourself holy and pure. All right. But this is proof, because we're talking about sexual sin, sexual immorality. So if you lay with a temple harlot and you're partaking in a ritual to her god by having sex with her, that's what this is going into. It says, but he that is verse 16, what know ye not that he which is joined to an harlot is one body? For two, saith he, shall be one flesh. And that's what marriage is, joining two parties between a man and a woman, and joining them together, and they become one flesh. That's how she becomes your wife. That's how you become her husband. And what is a husband? A husband, when you look it up, a husbandman, it literally means to plow. What exactly are you plowing? You're plowing the earth. The woman represents the earth. You plow her, and then you plant your seed. All right, and that's what causes sexual reproduction. Okay. So let me do this because there's several verses on it. Genesis 2:24 says, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." All right, Matthew, and this is the Lord repeating it. Matthew 19:5, it says, "And said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore the Most High have joined together, let not man put asunder." All right, same thing in Mark, Ephesians 5:31. "For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." So that's pretty much a marriage. All right, the union between a man and a woman. And what consummated, what makes it official, is the act of sex. But of course, we had the tradition of having a marriage ceremony, where you would go to the father. It would already be planned out. The father would already have it arranged of who his daughter was going to marry, and he was going to marry her to a man of understanding, a man that was well off. And they would, their families would join in a ceremony where they would have a banquet. They would have food, and then they would afterwards they would go into the marriage chamber, and he would pop her cherry, and then he would she would have the token of her virginity in there, and the blood on that cloth would be that token. All right, to prove that she's taken in marriage. So, like, what more proof do you need? So, going back to this guy, all right, he has a low level understanding as well. All right, he likes to pop a lot of shit. This Andrew dude, he looked like an Edomite to me. I think he is an Edomite, but I could be wrong. But he pops a lot of shit, just the way he speaks. Very proud, arrogant dude right there. But I just showed what Apostle Paul's writings alone. All right, that's the Bible supports that. All right, sex constitutes marriage.
When you say nebulous, what Christians, and I don't know if do you classify as a Christian?
I'm an Orthodox Christian.
Got you. What Christians like to do is negate the Old Testament. When Christ didn't negate the Old Testament.
I'm not negating anything.
You are. You're saying I can't use the Old Testament as the standard.
You can.
But when Christ was telling them not to divorce, what did he use as the standard?
Yeah, I didn't say you couldn't use the Old Testament.
I'm asking you, what did he? Okay, then. So
he referenced what was the law at the time. But here's the thing, though.
Law.
They explained, like Paul, especially in great detail, explained how marriage works, and it had nothing at all to do
Paul say in detail
with sex.
And he's wrong. He's totally wrong. He's confident that he's right, and he's arguing just to be right, but he's actually wrong because I just showed in the scriptures. All right, 2 different verses, man, and going into the original language. Okay.
Well, sir,
Do you want Paul's breakdown on marriage?
No, you said he went in great detail.
He did actually go in pretty good detail for how marriage works. Yeah.
How you get married or how you stay married?
Well, he explained basically all of it, actually. Mm-hmm. So, here, I can pull it up. Mm-hmm. Give me a second here.
I wonder, is he going to go into the same scriptures that I just pulled? Let's see if he does that.
We can go through what Paul did.
I think you want 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter.
Okay, let's pull up.
See, he already knew where he. Hey, but hey, us Israelites, that's what they know about us, that we're studied, man. All this big fuss and uproar from these Christians about us, but really they know that we're studied. That's why we've been a threat to them. He knew where he was referencing before he even was about to go to it. You want to go to 1 Corinthians 7, right? That's where you knew that's where he was going to go. And I already got that covered in the lesson. You Christians are low level, man. We're steps ahead of y'all.
Corinthians 7
that you might be referring to, because in verse 36 it says, if any man think he behaveth himself uncomely toward his virgin, and she pass the flower of her age, and need so require, let him do what he will, he sinneth not, let them marry. So it's telling him he can do what he wants with his woman. So if he wants a ceremony,
so that's 1 Corinthians 7
verse 36.
Okay, let's go to 36. Let's make sure that we get this in context. Okay.
And he ain't gonna go deeper. Go into the word marry. All right, what is it in the Greek? And see how it ties in with the actual nature of two men and two women physically joining together. He ain't gonna do that.
Something that
he's only gonna take out of it what he wants to take out from that verse. That's why it's a waste of time debating these people, man.
Guys don't really do too. If anyone is worried that he might not be acting honorably towards the virgin he is engaged to, and if his passions are too strong and he feels he ought to marry, he should do as he wants. He is not sinning. Okay, so what do you think that means? What do you think that means?
No, you're supposed to tell us what that means. Not me. You said Paul went in great detail.
No, you told me to pull up this verse.
No, you was definitely gonna go there, because that's one of the main chapters. Paul is actually dealing with marriage, the topic of marriage. That's one of the main chapters. As soon as you start at the top, the whole entire chapter is going into that. So he's being a devil right here. He's being a damn devil, acting oblivious. This is why you don't deal with disingenuous people. This is why we can't waste time with these damn Christians. This is not up for debate. There's way more important shit out there, man. Matter of fact, prophecy. That's what we should be focused on, but this is what, people are focused on. So yeah, I'm gonna end it right there, man. I think I, made my point, and hopefully this was edifying. Call Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Shalom.